The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Robert Tan. Catch up with us on Business Brief. Asian shares fell on Thursday after Wall Street slumped. The sell-off in the U.S. stocks was driven by pressure from the Treasury bond market, as well as worries about the surging U.S. debt. Both Japan's Nikkei 225 and South Korea's Kospi dropped more than 1%. Australia's ASX 200 fell 0.56%, and Hong Kong's Hang Seng declined 0.89%. India's Nifty also lost ground, slipping 0.95%. And Taiwan's TAIEX dropped 0.60%. Bucking the trend, Indonesia's JKSE edged up 0.55%. In the currency market, the dollar weakened against the Japanese yen, falling 0.29% and slipped nearly 0.1% against the Hong Kong dollar. The greenback is flat with a downward bias against the Singapore dollar, while it is down by 0.14% against the Thai baht. Meanwhile, the Australian dollar strengthened, rising 0.20%. The Korean won weakened, with the dollar climbing 0.69%. Commodity and cryptocurrency markets saw mostly positive movement. Gold rose 0.75%. Oil prices edged higher, with West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.19%. Brent crude gaining 0.11%, while Dubai crude slipped slightly by almost 0.1%. In the crypto space, Bitcoin surged nearly 3% and Ethereum jumped more than 5%. A shooting outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday left 2 Israeli embassy staff members dead. Israeli officials condemned the attack, calling it an act of terrorism. The victims, a couple about to be engaged, were leaving an event hosted by the American Jewish Committee when the gunman opened fire. The suspect, identified as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez, chanted "Free Palestine" while in custody. U.S. authorities say there's no ongoing threat as an investigation is underway. Meanwhile, top executives of major U.S. airlines and cargo carriers issued a joint letter on Wednesday declaring the nation's aging air traffic control system is failing Americans. They are demanding urgent congressional action to fund modernization efforts. The appeal was signed by CEOs of American Airlines, United Airlines, Delta Airlines, and Southwest Airlines, among others. They warn that Federal Aviation Administration technology has become out of date, and they are calling for immediate before the business summer travel season ends. U.S. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy revealed a multi-billion-dollar modernization plan on May 8, noting that the current system still relies on 1970s-era radar technology. Vietnam's Prime Minister and U.S. President Donald Trump's son Eric holds a groundbreaking ceremony for $1.5 billion luxury residential development with 3 golf courses outside Hanoi. This came after the communist authorities in Vietnam approved the project of the Trump Organization family business and its local partners last week. The authorities are also separately negotiating over tariffs with Washington. Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh says Eric Trump's visit motivated them to expedite the project, as he urges local authorities to give maximum support and facilitate the completion of the 990-hectare resort by the end of 2027. The U.S. presidential son is also set to meet Ho Chi Minh City officials today to explore plans for a skyscraper in Vietnam's southern business hub. Finance ministers from the Group of 7 industrial democracies gather in Alberta, Canada, as globe trade uncertainties mount and new U.S. tariffs loom on the horizon. The talks come at a pivotal moment for export-driven economies, with the U.S. under President Donald Trump poised to double tariffs on fellow G7 members, including Japan, Germany, France, and Italy as early as July. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is urging allies to unite against China's state-subsidized export strategy, blamed for flooding global markets with artificially cheap goods. Also on the agenda, tougher controls on smuggling through low-value shipments, some linked to China and the global fentanyl trade. Philippine exporters, particularly in electronics, semiconductors, and garments are monitoring the outcome closely as policy shifts among G7 nations could impact supply costs, trade flows, and regional competitiveness. Chinese electric vehicle giant BYD unveils its 10th model in Europe, the budget-friendly Dolphin Surf. Launched in Berlin, it starts at just 19,990 euros with a 322-kilometer range. Higher-end models offer up to 507 kilometers, priced under 25,000 euros during promo. Analysts say it hits the sweet spot for most drivers. The pressure is on for European car makers to catch up. China's push into affordable EVs may also accelerate climate goals. And in the Vatican, Pope Leo XIV issues a fresh call for Israel to allow urgent humanitarian aid into Gaza as global pressure builds to address the deepening crisis. Speaking from St. Peter's Square during his weekly general audience, the newly installed pontiff called the situation in Palestine worrying and saddening, urging the international community to support unimpeded aid access and a lasting peace. The Vatican's appeal comes amid warnings from aid agencies that Gaza is facing an imminent famine with humanitarian conditions nearing catastrophic levels. The escalating conflict continues to pose broader global risks, disrupting regional stability, affecting energy supply chains, and complicating diplomatic efforts across the Middle East. We're taking a short break. The biggest business stories from around the country are up next. You're watching Business Brief. Cabinet secretaries submit their courtesy resignations in compliance with an order from President Bongbong Marcos. The president called on his entire cabinet to resign this morning. Malacanang says it is meant to give him the space to evaluate each department's performance and determine who will continue to serve. The palace admits the move has something to do with the lackluster performance of its allies in the elections.
Aminado ang Pangulo na kulang sa kanyang paningin, nakulangan siguro ang taong bayan sa naging performance ng gobyerno, kaya hindi nila nakuha yung pinaka-target na numero, especially sa Senado. It's time to realign government with the people's expectations. The people have spoken and they have expect results, not politics, not excuses. We hear them and we will act.
Despite the shake-up, Malacanang assures the public government services and projects will remain uninterrupted. The palace says the secretaries will stay in their positions while they are being evaluated. Business leaders speak out amid this morning's cabinet revamp at a pivotal time for the economy. Sujin Kim reports on the Makati Business Club's recommendations. Go ahead, Sujin.
Robert, the Makati Business Club is urging President Bongbong Marcos to retain key members of his cabinet's economic cluster amid calls for courtesy resignations, warning that any major shakeup could undermine policy continuity at a crucial time for the Philippine economy. In a strong show of support, MBC gave the economic team a high 8 out of 10 rating, praising the competence of Finance Secretary Ralph Recto, Trade Secretary Cristina Roque, Transport Secretary Vince Dizon, and Agriculture Secretary Francisco Tiu Laurel. The group described them as the best people for the job and said they would be very surprised if a major revamp takes place. MBC particularly voiced satisfaction with the Agriculture Department, saying they're very happy with Secretary Francisco Laurel's efforts to restore confidence in the sector through strong private sector engagement and strategic planning. However, the business group made it clear that their support is not blanket approval. MBC officials stressed they're not 100% happy with the overall performance of the economic team, particularly in terms of fiscal prioritization. MBC ICC trustee and FINMA chairman Ramon Del Rosario raised concerns over how the national budget is being spent, warning that funds are being diverted away from high-impact development projects and into short-term cash assistance programs or ayudas that he says are obviously politically motivated. He urged the administration to take the national budget seriously and refocus resources towards long-term economic growth. The business community's message is clear: retain the competent, reform what's broken, and maintain democracy. And those are latest updates from Makati City. Back to you, Robert.
Thank you for that report, Sujin Kim. Meanwhile, Bilyonaryo Dennis Ui's Dito Telecommunity Corporation denies hiring overstaying Chinese nationals. Adel Tamano, the firm's chief revenue and corporate communications officer, says they welcome the probe of the Department of Information and Communications Technology on the allegations that Chinese employees or partners of Dito are involved in espionage. Tamano also expresses confidence that the investigation will once again affirm the findings of the joint audit, stating that Dito has passed the government standards for cybersecurity. He adds it has safeguarded its network facilities and information assets. Media giant GMA Network Incorporated files an estafa complaint against the officers of the Television and Production Exponent, or TAPE Incorporated. This is due to TAPE's alleged failure to turn over 37.9 million pesos worth of ad revenues. The complaint named former TAPE CEO Romeo Halashos Jr., convicted child rapist Romeo Halashos Sr., Bullet Halashos, executive Malu Choa Fagar, and 2 other TAPE officials. GMA says TAPE violated the trust arrangement outlined in their agreement by using the funds for operational expenses instead of remitting them to the network. The Bureau of Internal Revenue streamlines VAT refund rules to boost efficiency and improve the business climate for exporters and investors. Under the BIR's new guidelines, taxpayers can now submit certified copies of sales invoices instead of originals when claiming VAT refunds. The agency has also scrapped 3 documentary requirements, including importation records and proof of business registration. Starting April 2025, exporters no longer need to file proof of exports, as the Department of Trade and Industry will handle verification digitally. BIR Commissioner Romeo Lumagi Jr. says the changes are designed to make refunds simpler, faster, and more accessible, as the government pushes to reduce compliance burden and attract more investments. Philinvest Development Corporation seeks to raise as much as 8 billion pesos through a perpetual preferred shares offering as the group strengthens its capital base to support long-term growth. The Gotianon-led firm says the fundraise is part of its ongoing capital-raising initiatives. The Securities and Exchange Commission has also issued a certificate of filing for the enabling resolution supporting the offer. The offering includes a base tranche of up to 6 million preferred shares with an oversubscription option of up to 2 million shares. Indicative pricing is set at 1,000 pesos per share. The Department of Budget and Management approves the release of over 1.4 billion pesos for a peace-building program under the Social Welfare Department, part of the government's effort to strengthen post-conflict economic recovery and local development. Budget Secretary Amena Pangandaman has issued a special allotment release order, or SARO, for the program, which aims to improve the socio-economic conditions of families affected by armed conflict. The funding will also support long-term resilience by generating livelihood opportunities and community-led initiatives through local government units. The Department of Agriculture is seeking a 10 billion peso budget for its 20 peso per kilo rice program in 2026, as the government looks to expand market interventions amid sticky food inflation. Agriculture Assistant Secretary Arnel de Mesa says the funds will be allocated to Food Terminal Incorporated, or FTI, which will purchase aging rice stocks from the National Food Authority for retail under the subsidized program. The proposed budget is double the 5 billion pesos currently allocated from the Office of the President's Contingency Fund. The DA plans to roll out the program nationwide next year, as rice prices remain elevated due to global supply volatility and climate-related risks. The National Bureau of Investigation is tracking down a suspected online scam syndicate in Cebu City after a hacker exposed internal records tied to a global investment fraud operation. The NBI Region 7 launched an immediate operation after a hacker published a YouTube video showing what appears to be evidence of fraud, including names and faces of suspected scammers. The hub, located along Archbishop Reyes Street in Mabolo, was found abandoned when authorities arrived. NBI Director Jaime Santiago confirms that at least 40 individuals are under investigation for allegedly duping hundreds of victims in Europe, North America, and Africa through a fake online investment scheme. A Philippine lawmaker warns that the proposed ASEAN unified visa system, modeled after Europe's Schengen zone, may pose national security risks that outweigh its economic gains. Re-elected Cagayan de Oro Representative Rufus Rodriguez says the measure could be exploited by foreign nationals posing as tourists, including alleged Chinese spies. He further warns that a unified visa could pave the way for an influx of scammers and transnational criminal groups involved in cyber fraud, human trafficking, and narcotics trade. The Department of Tourism has expressed support for the initiative, citing its potential to boost regional tourism, business travel, and cross-border spending. The proposal is expected to be part of next year's ASEAN Summit agenda, which the Philippines will host. Rodriguez urges President Bongbong Marcos to closely examine the risks, stressing that security considerations must come before tourism-led growth. We're taking a short break. Business Brief will be right back. From waiting tables to building a food empire, meet the D siblings, the next-gen power duo behind some of the Philippines' most iconic dining brands. Ferdy Salvador tells us how they're taking risks, trusting their palate, and turning their family legacy into a multi-billion peso business. Here's that story.
Behind the success of Foodie Global Concepts, which operates more than 300 food establishments across the country, is the D family, led by their patriarch Enrico Ricky D. Trade Talks, the high life of the Bilyonaryo news channels, recently spoke with two members of the next generation of the D family, siblings Erica and Eric D. Eric is the Chief Operating Officer of Foodie Global Concepts. He got his early exposure in the business working as a waiter in the family's restaurant. His sister, Erica D., is the company's COO. She also handles operations of Yao Yao, a popular frozen yogurt chain.
Everyone, I think, was prepared to kind of take over the family business as well. So even as I was in college, I was opening my own shop in Ateneo. So I ran my own restaurant as well in Ateneo.
Really?
Yeah, while I
You were a working student, basically.
Yeah, so my parents stopped giving me allowances because they knew I was making so much money in my restaurant.
I grew up in the industry, so I always tell the story that I literally grew up in a restaurant. So my parents were...
You did?
My parents were, I think, 19 when I was born. So
yes.
When they started that business, I was already exposed to the restaurants. For me, it felt natural.
Yes.
Even through college, I was working as a waiter in the US. And it felt very good, right? I felt at home whenever I was at a restaurant. I ended up handling a hotel in Kuala Lumpur as well, so still back into F&B. And it felt very natural for me to be in a restaurant. So when I had to take on the role, it felt like it was meant for me.
We asked them how they choose a franchise that they will bring to the Philippines.
It's always a gamble. You cannot really tell what will work and what won't. But you take calculated risks.
Okay.
Right? So...
for Yao Yao, how did you make it?
So for Yao Yao, well, it was easy for us to bring it in. Even if we're not into yogurt, we saw the lines, the long, long lines in Singapore. And you can't question success, right?
Yes.
So as long as the price points are right, and we believed in the taste profile, so we tried it out, and now we're at 100 stores.
Eric adds they put a premium on authenticity and sustainability. If they think a store's menu is not suitable to the Filipino taste and doubt its long-term operations, they will not push through with a franchise. Erica and Eric represent the new generation of leaders in the food and beverage industry, integrating new knowledge they acquired with the business acumen passed on to them by their father. Ferdy Salvador, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Philippine shares fall back to the negative territory in the fourth trading day of the week. The PSE index ended lower by more than 1% to close at 63.05, finishing the day as the third worst performer in Asia. Among the sectoral indices, only mining and oil ended in the green, with property falling the most at more than 1%. Decliners outpaced advancers 112 to 66. Total value turnover reached 6.4 billion pesos. Majority of the day's most active stocks ended in the red, with Universal Robina falling the most at more than 3%. Meanwhile, the foreign exchange market, the peso is currently trading at 55.64 against the greenback, strengthening from previous close of 55.66. And that's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Robert Tan. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business. Only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. See you then.